So, good afternoon everyone. Again, my name is Kirby Katipay and I'm here to continue my report. So slide 20 ba? So, this is the cell of Sing Sing at Sing Sing prison. So, this looks like this image is the image of the room inside the Sing Sing prison. So, next slide. So, next topic is the Auburn State Prison. So, Auburn State Prison is a prison located in Auburn, New York, opened in 1816. It established a disciplinary and administrative system based on silent and corporal punishment and congregate group of labor. In architecture and routine, Auburn became the model of prison throughout the United States. So Auburn State Prison is a imprisonment that well known about their punishment and the disciplinary action in the individuals who commit or who violate their rules inside the imprisonment. And one of their punishment is silence. Silence or avoid making noise, especially at night. So, next slide. So, Auburn State Prison, from their perspectives, this moral guidance could no longer adequately control disorder. This saw crime as the product of social chaos. Necessary to its eradication was a structured environment in which deviance could be separated from the disorder or society and the contagion of the another. So it it says that the criminal behaviors came from the environment. They develop their individual perspectives in the environment, and that that can be resulted to crime. So deviance could be separated. Deviance or the chaos is the necessary to its eradication. So chaos means war. So war in the society or being not understood, being not as one can lead to or should I say self improvement or competition inside the society can be cause of criminality. So next slide. So Auburn State Prison or Auburn originally used congregated cell, but in 1821 Warden William Britton borrowed the concept of solitary cell means solitary cells from the so-called Pennsylvania system. So congregated cells, it means they are working as group. They are one inside a room. Then solitary cells, so you only one per individual will put in the certain room. So Britain designed a unique 5-tiered cell block of the 2 rows of single cell placed back to back, center building cells measured only. So this statement is the the this statement is the detailed the details about the imprisonment or the details inside the room. So next slide is next slide. So pause adverts. So Auburn State Prison, whereas the Pennsylvania system, inmates did handicraft work in their cells. Auburn prisoners labored in the congregated workshop of offsetting imprisonment by fulfilling private industry contracts. So it means that Pennsylvania system is they work as a group or they work as an as a team. But Auburn system is if they are assigned of at assigned a task, the the prisoner or the inmate do their individual because they are in a cell that they didn't have any roommate. So next slide. So Auburn State Prison. So the most hardened criminals were placed in the solitary confinement without work. After numerous suicides in, instances of mental illness and attempted escapes, the governor of New York terminated the classification system and the experiment in solitary confinement. So one of the punishment in the Auburn system is the solitary confinement. So some of the notorious criminals will be put in a room without any vision that or any they can't see the outside world or any individuals. So some of so so that this punishment will also give give a bad effect of our prisoners, our inmates. So some of this is the mental illness and or depression because they can they can they will there are no individuals that they can talk, that they can give their opinion, or they can express themselves. And some of these are attempted to escapes, and sadly it will come out to suicides. But New York government is terminated this kind of punishment and classification system and the ex, experiment in the solitary confinement. So next slide. So Auburn State Prison. Subsequently, all male inmates work in congregated shops by day, returning to individual cells at night. And some female inmates first committed to Auburn in 1825 were relegated to an attic and excluded from regular work and exercise. So their purpose is to ensure that inmates did not corrupt one another. Brighton's successors, Ilma Lane, enforced a quasi-military routine to absolute silence and economic productivity. So Auburn State Prison implemented that every morning or in daytime, the all male inmates will do their job or will do their tasks in work as congregated shops, and in the night they are return to their cells. And and also that one of their punishment is silence. If if there are all violators of their rules, will have been another punishment. So next slide. So Auburn State Prison, unlike Auburn or Sing Sing, Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary, 1829, was intended to keep convicts separate even as they work in order to prevent any earthly contamination or destruction that might impede, impede their repentance, hence the term of penitentiary. So the purpose of Pennsylvania is they want to assure that the criminals will they will cannot be they will what's that words? One of the purpose of that is they want the inmates to do not commits sin again, to and to ensure that there will be no destruction in their rehabilitation and repentance of the crime they committed. So for them to be rehabilitated, that is one of their way to rehabilitate the prisoner. So next slide. So although Beaumont and Tackley found it incontestable that this perfect isolation secured the prisoner from all fatal contamination, they favored the more cost-effective Auburn plan, which seemed more likely to enable states to profit from convict labor. So they says that the perfect isolations are the security of the prisoners from all fatal contamination that can affect their mindsets or their perspective, and more effectively this is the Auburn plan. So next slide. So next is the Pennsylvania system. So penal method based on the principle that solitary confinement foster penitence and encourages reformation. The idea was advocated by the Philadelphia Society for alleviating the miseries of public prisons, whose most active members were Quakers. In 1829. The Eastern State Penitentiary on Chick Hill in Philadelphia applied this so-called separate philosophy. So Pennsylvania system is they advocate the or they advocate that they encourage the reformation, and they introduce the every cell is only one person to avoid distraction in their repentance. So the also that they want the most active members were Quakers in 1829. They focus the reformation of the inmates, and also they want to rehabilitate the perspective or to correct the individual inside their imprisonment. So next slide. Next slide. So incapacitation seeks to prevent. So before I forgot, so this is the different types of criminal punishment. So first is incapacitation. So incapacitation seek to prevent future crime by physical moving criminals away from society. This punishment can be traced to ancient times. Terence Mead and Hong Lu write in Punishment, a comparative historical perspective. Banishment was a common penalty in antiquity. So incapacitation, so it refers to the restriction of an individual's freedoms and liberties that they would normally have in society. Within the within the criminal justice system, incapacitation is the response used when a person has committed a crime. So by incapacitating the convicted offender, we prevent the individuals from committing future crimes because he is removed from society and locked up or restrained somehow. So it can be noted that incapacitation takes a forward-looking perspective in that it cannot rectify crimes that have already been committed and only attempts to prevent crimes from being committed. So, in the future, incapacitation is also described as being one of the four goals of incarceration or imprisonment. So, incapacitation comes first and then comes deterrence, rehabilitation, and finally, it is retribution. So, next slide. So, in addition, later it was for common for colonizing European countries to ship convicts and undesirable overseas in modern times. So, house arrest, incarceration, and the death penalty are the forms of incapacitation. So, next slide. So, second is the deterrence. So, the goal of deterrence is to persuade citizens and possible offenders or offenders to conform to the rules of law. So, deterrence is probably the most commonly expressed rationally for the death penalty. The essence of the theory is that the threat of being executed in the future will be sufficient to cause a significant number of people refrain. So, sufficient to cause a significant number of people to refrain from committing a heinous crime they had otherwise planned. Deterrence is not physically concerned with the prevention of further killing by an already convicted death penalty or defendant. That falls under the topic of incapacitation. So, deterrence should not be considered in a vacuum. The critical question is not whether potential criminals will be dissuaded from killing because they would face the death penalty rather than no punishment at all. Otherwise, or other punishment such as life without parole might provide equal deterrence at far less cost without the attendant risk of executing an innocent person. Whether the death penalty is a proven method of lowering a murder rate has been subjected to many studies of many decades. So for them, deterrence is a punishment to avoid or to give fear to the individuals to commit a crime. So deterrence is also the for them, deterrence is one of the solution, and it it will be proven because the crime rate will of murder will decrease. So next slide. Ipo sa advance. So there are two different types of the four different types of deterrence. So first is the specific deterrence. So it analyzes how effective punishment is on an individual to the future behavior. So it means specific. So from the word specific is related to the crime they are committed. So if you committed a murder, so it possibly the punishment will be death penalty or life imprisonment. So for them to avoid the future behavior or the individual future behavior, so they do this punishment to avoid that certain thing. So next slide. So next is the general deterrence. So general deterrence is seeks to understand how individual punishment can deter others from committing crime. So the general deterrence means whole. So it is how how individual understand the crime or the punishment they will give. So for them to avoid avoid others from committing this certain crime. So next is the marginal deterrence. So marginal deterrence is it is a punishment depends on the situation. So it will this punishment will consider a certain thing, not like the specific deterrence and the general deterrence. So marginal deterrence seeks to reconcile how effective different types of punishment are, either specific or general deterrence. So it measures the effectiveness of the two punish two two different deterrents or the two different punishment. So I mean that different types of punishment. So next slide. So next is the partial deterrence. So partial deterrence refers to the situation in which that the threat of penalty has some deterrent value even when someone engaged in illegal behavior. For example, a criminal simply robbing victim instead of also causing physical harm. So partial deterrence means the offenders commit crime not totally. So for for the example they gave that a offender robbing a victim, by instead of giving harm, he also only he only get what he want, or he only get what the purpose of that certain act. So next slide. So next is the third is the retribution. So retribution as one of the oldest forms of punishment. Retribution has roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition of justice. So Retribution is probably the oldest justification of punishment and can be found in the theories offered by Kant and Hegel. So it is the fact that the individual has committed a wrongful act that justifies punishment, and that the punishment should be proportional to the wrong committed. Its underlying premises has been summarized by the philosopher. So retribution theorists claim that the individuals are rational beings capable of making informed decision, and therefore rule breaking is a rational consciousness decision. So it says that retribution is the act of decision making. So individuals create a crime because of their goal or their wants, because individuals have their own decision making. So they propose and that punishment of varying which are matched to the crimes differing seriousness, minor punishment or minor crime. So it says that retributions or the punishment is swak, or it will be suit on the crime they committed. So next slide. So in addition, in the book of criminal law by Lisa M. Storm explained that retribution prevents crime by giving victims or society a certain sense of satisfaction that a defendant has been punished appropriately, reinforcing the belief that the criminal justice system is working effectively. So according to Miss Lisa M. Storm, so satisfaction is a big factor in giving punishment to the offender for them to be punished appropriately, so that reinforcing the best, I mean the our criminal justice system will be working effectively. So he want that giving punishment that suit to the crime or suit to the crime that committed. So next slide. So next is the rehabilitation. So a common prison policy in America up until the 1970s, rehabilitation focuses on helping criminals and the prisoners overcome the barriers that lead them to committing criminal acts. So the concept of rehabilitation rests on the assumption that criminal behavior is caused by some factor. So this factor is the perspective does not deny that people make choices to break the law. So but it does assert that these choices are not a matter of pure free will. Instead, the decision to commit a crime, it's held to be determined or at least heavily influenced by a person's social surroundings. So sociologically, development or biologically make up peoples are not all the same, and thus free to express their will, but rather are different. So these individuals' difference shape how people behave, including whether they are likely to break the law. When people are characterized by various crimin various factor. So it says that rehabilitation, um, crime crime are committed because of some factors like personal choices, the over reaction of their free will, because they says that I for them free will is they can do all things that they want. They didn't think about the outcome of that certain thing, because they focus that to achieve their goal, even that certain things is against the law. And it says that individuals are do their are want to, I mean, some individuals do things that they think the right. They don't think the possible outcome or the the result of that certain thing, not only in himself but also in the society. So that's all, and goodbye. Thank you for listening.